The whole town wanted him dead. But the one woman who had every reason to hate him was the only one who could keep him alive. Subscribe to Wild Sunset Love. Hit the bell, like, comment, share. Thank you for watching. They called him the Ghost of the Gallows, a man who was supposed to have died 5 years ago for a crime he didn't commit. But tonight, Elias Kent was back, and the town of Redemption Creek had a long memory. Clara Walsh knew she should have turned him in. Elias had been her fiancé once, until he was accused of robbing the bank and killing her father in the chaos. He vanished. She buried him in her heart. But seeing him now, wounded, leaning against her horse stall, the past wasn't dead. It was bleeding all over her floor. We spend our lives trying to bury the past, but the past has a habit of digging itself out when a storm rolls in. 5 years she had rehearsed what she would say if she ever saw his face again. She would scream, she would shoot, she would finally have justice. But standing in the dark, listening to the horses whinny in fear outside, all she could see was the boy who taught her how to ride. She didn't hide him because she believed him. She hid him because she knew that look in the mob's eyes. It wasn't justice, it was hunger. And she wasn't going to let a lynch mob use her land as their gallows. Clara shoved him into the crawl space and slid the board back just as heavy knocking echoed on the barn door. He whispered to her through the wood, "You always were a terrible liar, Clara." Marshall Briggs wasn't just the law. He was the man who had courted Clara for the last 3 years, the man who had helped her rebuild this ranch after her father died, the man who had convinced the town she wasn't the traitor's daughter. He stepped into the barn. He saw the blood. Clara saw him see it. Briggs notices and says, "There's blood on your floor, Clara." Mare threw a shoe, cut her fetlock. He looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then he walked to the door, but he stopped. He looked back, and in that look, Clara felt something cold slide into her chest. He knew. You know, the funny thing about Elias Kent, he always had a way of making women lie for him. The door slammed. Clara slid down the stall wall, her legs giving out. She had just lied to the law, for a ghost. She had seen his bare back 100 times when they were young. She knew every freckle, every muscle, but now it was a canvas of pain. Whip marks, burn marks. "Elias, what did they do to you?" He replied, "They didn't hang me 5 years ago. They dragged me out of town, beat me, and left me for dead in a ravine. I survived, but the man who framed me, he's still here, and he's the one who shot me tonight." Here is the truth that burned Clara more than the whiskey on his wound. She had stopped loving Elias the day he was accused. She had to survive. But watching him flinch under her touch, she realized she had stopped hating him the moment he walked back into her life. And that terrified her more than any mob. Clara wanted to slap him. She wanted to throw him out. But a splinter of doubt lodged itself in her heart. She remembered the way Briggs looked at the barn last night. Not with suspicion of a man hiding, but with the paranoia of a thief protecting his treasure. Elias replied, "I heard he was going to marry you. I couldn't let you become a ghost too." He reached out. His fingers brushed her hand. She pulled away, but not fast enough. Desire and pain are two sides of the same coin. 5 years ago she lost him to hatred. Now she was terrified she was falling in love with him again, right as she realized she might be engaged to a monster. The town wasn't just haunting Elias. They were starting to haunt her. Word had spread that Clara Walsh was harboring secrets. But the real haunting began at night. "Do you hear that?" Elias asked. She listened. At first nothing. Then the crunch of boots, not on the road, in the hayloft above them. "Isn't it just the rats?" "No, it's him." A creak. A shadow passed by the hayloft window. Clara pulled Elias deeper into the shadows. They were pressed together, chest to chest. She could feel his heartbeat. In the darkness, with a killer circling above them, the walls between hatred and love finally crumbled. She was hiding him not because of the past anymore, but because the thought of him dying made her feel like her chest was caving in. Briggs made his move. He couldn't search the barn without a warrant, so he decided to starve them out. He cut off Clara's credit at the general store. He told her ranch hands not to show up for work. "Clara, I know you have a kind heart. Bring him out. Let me handle this legally. I promise you a fair trial. Like the last fair trial you gave him, the one where he was almost hanged before dawn?" For a split second, the mask dropped. Clara saw it. The cold-blooded killer Elias warned her about. Briggs said to her, "By sundown tomorrow, I'm coming for a barn inspection. If I find a fugitive on federal property, I will burn the barn down with him inside it. You have 24 hours. Elias tried to leave, to sacrifice himself. Clara blocked the door with a pitchfork. "We do what he doesn't expect. We don't hide. We attack." She pulled out a deed. The North Pasture. The land the railroad wanted. The land her father died for. If we go to them, we take away Briggs's prize. We make him irrelevant. It was a desperate gamble. But as they stood there mapping out their play, the tension between them snapped. Elias told her how he felt. "I never stopped loving you. Even when I was bleeding in the ravine, I was whispering your name. Tell me you believe me." Clara believed him. They kissed, not gentle. A collision of 5 years of grief, rage, and desperate hope. But outside the barn window, eyes were watching. Briggs had circled back early. He saw everything. By sundown, Clara and Elias were leading the horses out, ready to ride for the railroad. Then a flaming arrow arced through the sky and embedded itself in the barn roof. Briggs didn't wait for the deadline. He couldn't stand to see them together. Gunshots rang out from the tree line. Elias pushed Clara behind a water trough. Elias shouted, "Go! Ride for the pass!" Clara doesn't want to leave him. She unlocked the corral, letting the horses run wild. He fired back, his leg giving out from the old wound. She rode through the gunfire, reached down and grabbed his arm. He swung up behind her. Bullets whizzed past. Behind them, the barn collapsed in a tower of flame. In the glow of the fire, Clara saw Briggs standing in the road, lowering his pistol. He was smiling. He thought they were riding to their deaths. Briggs thought they were running. But Clara Walsh was a rancher's daughter. She knew every gully, every crevice. She wasn't running from the town. She was riding into it. Dawn broke over Redemption Creek. The town gathered, expecting a fugitive in chains. Instead, they saw Clara Walsh riding up the main street, her dress torn, her face smudged with soot. Behind her, Elias Kent, alive, armed, but not firing. "There he is, the murderer!" Clara held up the deed. And a letter from her father, written the day he died, naming Briggs as the killer. Elias didn't kill him. Briggs did. Briggs raised his gun at Clara. Elias stepped in front of her. "Go ahead, Marshal. Add another murder to the list." A train whistle echoed through the valley. The railroad executives had arrived. The deed was real. Briggs's power crumbled in an instant. In the end, it wasn't the bullet that killed his reign. It was the whistle of the train he tried to stop. Clara and Elias rode out of town together, not as fugitives, as survivors. You can't build a future by burying the past. Sometimes you have to let the past burn to the ground so something new can grow. And sometimes the cowboy who breaks your heart is the only one strong enough to save it.